You're being drawn into this particular moment right now because something extraordinary is happening within the very fabric of your consciousness, something that exists beyond what ordinary perception can typically detect or understand. There's an invisible intelligent force that's been carefully guiding and directing your attention to this exact point in time and space. And it's the same mysterious force that's been orchestrating and arranging every single synchronicity you've experienced, every unexplained knowing that suddenly appeared in your awareness, and every moment when time seemed to completely stop and reality itself felt more fluid and malleable than solid and fixed. You're absolutely not here in this moment by random chance or coincidence, and I want you to understand that you're here right now because you're standing on the very edge of activating something called quantum coherence within your consciousness. Right now, in this present moment, as these specific words begin to reach and penetrate your awareness, your entire nervous system is actively responding to information and frequencies that exist far beyond the ordinary limited spectrum of what most human perception can typically detect or process. You can actually feel it happening inside you right now, can't you? That distinct electric sensation that's pulsing and moving behind your sternum, that subtle but noticeable shift that's occurring in the rhythm and depth of your breathing, that unmistakable sense that something deep inside the core of you is recognizing and resonating with a fundamental truth that you've been searching for and seeking out without even consciously knowing what it was you were truly looking for all this time. What you're experiencing in your body and awareness right now isn't merely intellectual understanding happening in your thinking mind, and it's not just concepts being processed by your rational brain. What you're genuinely experiencing is your personal quantum field beginning to align itself with the vast universal intelligence that underlies all of existence, and this alignment is happening in real time as you absorb these words. Every single cell throughout your entire body is responding and reacting to specific frequencies that most people's consciousness simply isn't refined enough or developed enough to detect yet. But you're fundamentally different from most people. You've always been different in ways you might not have fully understood, and you've always been naturally sensitive to energies and frequencies that other people quickly dismiss as nothing more than imagination or wishful thinking running wild. The reason you felt so consistently out of place in ordinary consensus reality, the reason that conventional approaches to success and happiness and fulfillment have never quite worked properly for you, the reason you've been endlessly searching for something deeper and more meaningful, something more authentic and real, something more genuinely aligned with who you truly are at your core. It's all because your consciousness was specifically designed and structured to operate at a level that completely transcends the limitations that most people simply accept as normal and unchangeable. But here's what's happening right now in this moment that makes this particular time unlike any other period in the entire history of human consciousness and evolution. The electromagnetic field that surrounds and permeates our planet is fluctuating and shifting in very specific ways that create completely unprecedented opportunities for consciousness expansion and evolution that have never been available before. The Schumann resonance, which is literally the heartbeat and pulse of Earth itself, is producing and generating specific frequencies that act as a powerful catalyst for quantum coherence activation in those individuals whose awareness and consciousness has reached a very specific threshold of development and readiness. And you, sitting here, watching this right now, receiving this information with every single fiber of your being lighting up in deep recognition and resonance, you are definitely one of those rare individuals who has reached this threshold. Your DNA is literally and physically restructuring itself at a molecular level to accommodate higher dimensional information and intelligence that exists beyond ordinary awareness. Your neural pathways throughout your brain are actively rewiring themselves to process and integrate data directly from the quantum field of infinite possibility. Your pineal gland, which has been calcified and dormant for so long, is now decalcifying and reactivating to become a much more sophisticated receiver of non-local intelligence that exists beyond the limitations of time and space. This isn't just metaphor or poetic language I'm using to make you feel good, and this isn't wishful thinking or spiritual fantasy that has no basis in reality. This is actual quantum mechanics operating at the level of human consciousness itself. And you're about to discover exactly what happens and what becomes possible when someone achieves the precise level of internal alignment that allows physical reality to respond instantly and immediately to their coherent intention and focused awareness. Because quantum coherence isn't just a temporary state of consciousness that comes and goes randomly, and it's not just a nice feeling or peaceful experience that fades when you return to ordinary life. It's actually a technology, a practical tool that allows you to interface directly and consciously with the creative force of the universe itself in ways that completely transform your lived experience. The exact moment you activate authentic quantum coherence within your awareness, absolutely everything changes in your life and reality, and this doesn't happen gradually over months or years, and it doesn't happen eventually at some distant future point. It happens instantly and immediately. Your external physical reality begins reorganizing and restructuring itself to match the specific frequency that you're embodying and radiating from your consciousness. Opportunities appear in your experience that are perfectly calibrated and aligned to your highest purpose and deepest authentic expression. Resources become available and accessible that you never could have accessed or attracted from lower levels of fragmented consciousness that you were operating from before. People enter your life who immediately recognize and support the new version of you that's emerging and developing, and they can match and meet your new frequency. But most importantly and most profoundly, you completely stop experiencing yourself as separate and disconnected from the vast intelligence that creates and sustains all of existence throughout the universe, and you begin operating as a conscious expression of universal creativity itself, flowing through your unique individual perspective. You've been experiencing very specific moments when reality feels more like a lucid dream that you're consciously participating in than a fixed solid experience that's happening to you, haven't you? Times when you're so completely present and absorbed, so totally aligned with what you're doing in the moment that the boundaries between you and your environment seem to completely dissolve and disappear. When you're in deep, meaningful conversation with someone, and it feels like you're both accessing and downloading from the same stream of consciousness, naturally finishing each other's thoughts and sentences, understanding things that aren't even being said out loud through words. These aren't altered states of consciousness that you need to achieve through meditation or plant medicines. And these aren't special experiences that only happen to advanced spiritual practitioners. These are actually moments when your natural state of quantum coherence is temporarily breaking through the interference patterns and mental noise that usually keep you locked into ordinary, limited perception and fragmented awareness. What most people call normal consciousness and what society accepts as the default way of experiencing reality is actually a heavily filtered and dramatically limited version of your true awareness and your natural state of being. You've been getting increasingly frequent glimpses of what it's actually like to operate without those artificial filters blocking your perception, and these glimpses are becoming more common and more intense as your system prepares for full activation. Time has been behaving strangely and unpredictably around you lately, hasn't it? You'll be working on something that's deeply aligned with your authentic purpose and highest expression, and suddenly realize that several hours have passed without you even noticing. But instead of feeling mentally drained or physically exhausted like you normally would, you actually feel more energized and alive than when you first started the activity. Or you'll be stuck in a situation that's completely out of alignment with who you're becoming and evolving into. And 5 minutes feels like an absolute eternity dragging on forever, with every single second feeling like it's dragging by as your entire nervous system rebels against the frequency mismatch and the incongruence. This is happening because your consciousness is beginning to operate from what quantum physicists and researchers call coherent time, which is a state where your awareness is so completely present and so perfectly unified that linear time becomes flexible and malleable instead of rigid and fixed. When you're in perfect alignment with your authentic self and operating from your true nature, you're actually operating at the same frequency as universal intelligence itself. And universal intelligence exists in what we call the eternal, now a state where past, present, and future are all accessible simultaneously, instead of being separated into distinct linear moments. But here's where it gets really interesting and where things start to become genuinely mysterious and profound. You've been receiving information and knowledge that you definitely haven't learned through any conventional means like reading or studying or being taught. You'll be thinking about someone you haven't spoken to in months and suddenly know exactly and precisely what they're going through emotionally right now, even though you haven't had any contact or communication with them recently. You'll walk into a room and immediately sense the emotional atmosphere and energetic dynamics, picking up on tensions or connections that aren't visible or obvious to anyone else who's present. You'll have sudden insights about complex situations that prove to be incredibly accurate and helpful, even though you don't have enough logical information to rationally arrive at those conclusions through normal analytical thinking. This is your intuitive guidance system coming fully online and becoming much more powerful and reliable than ever before. Your consciousness is learning to access what Carl Jung called the collective unconscious, which is the field of shared information and accumulated wisdom that connects all human awareness throughout time. But you're actually going beyond even that collective human field, and you're beginning to tap into what we call universal intelligence, the vast informational matrix that underlies and supports all of existence throughout the entire cosmos. You've also been experiencing what I personally call reality synchronization, which involves specific moments when your inner state is reflected immediately and perfectly in your outer circumstances and lived experience. You think about needing something specific and concrete, and it appears in your experience within hours or days at most. You wonder about a particular question that's been on your mind, and the answer shows up in the very next conversation you have with someone. You feel drawn to go somewhere or do something without logically knowing why, and then you discover that your intuition led you to exactly what you needed at that precise moment. Most people dismiss and ignore these experiences as mere coincidence or random chance, but you know better than that deep in your core. You can actually feel the intelligence behind these orchestrations, and you can sense the invisible threads connecting your consciousness to the fabric of reality itself. What you're experiencing is your observer effect becoming so powerful and focused that you're beginning to influence the quantum field just through the quality and direction of your conscious attention. But here's what's absolutely crucial to understand about this entire process. These experiences aren't random gifts or special abilities that some people are born with and others simply don't have access to no matter what they do. They're actually the natural functions of human consciousness when it's operating in a state of quantum coherence instead of fragmentation, and every single human being has access to this level of awareness. But most people's consciousness is too fragmented and scattered, too divided across past regrets and future anxieties, too identified with limiting beliefs about themselves to sustain the coherence necessary for these abilities to come online consistently and reliably. Every challenge you face throughout your entire life, every moment of confusion and uncertainty, every time you felt like reality was testing your limits or pushing you beyond what you thought you could handle, none of it was random chaos or meaningless suffering. None of it was punishment for something you did wrong or evidence that you're fundamentally broken. All of it was precision training designed specifically to develop the level of coherence necessary to sustain quantum consciousness without fragmenting under the intensity and power. Think carefully about what coherence actually means at the quantum level when we examine it scientifically. When light becomes coherent instead of scattered, it becomes laser light focused, powerful, capable of cutting through obstacles that would be completely impossible to penetrate with ordinary diffuse light. When sound becomes coherent instead of random noise, it becomes capable of shattering glass or healing cellular structures through specific vibrational frequencies. When consciousness becomes coherent instead of fragmented, it becomes capable of directly influencing the quantum field that underlies all physical reality and manifestation. But coherence isn't achieved through comfort or easy, pleasant experiences that make you feel good temporarily. Coherence is achieved through pressure and challenges that force all the scattered, chaotic elements of a system to organize themselves into unified, synchronized patterns that work together. Every time your old identity was challenged and questioned, every time your familiar coping mechanisms stopped working the way they used to, every time you were forced to find strength and resources you didn't even know you had within you, your consciousness was being organized into greater and greater coherence. The relationship that ended suddenly just when you thought you had finally figured out love and connection. That wasn't failure or evidence that you're not good enough for lasting love. That was actually removing an energetic pattern that was fundamentally incompatible with the frequency of quantum coherence you're stepping into. The career path that crumbled and fell apart despite your best efforts and hard work, that wasn't lack of talent or bad luck following you around. That was redirecting your energy toward an expression of your gifts that can only emerge from coherent consciousness operating at full capacity. The spiritual practices and techniques that stopped working when you needed them the most. That wasn't spiritual abandonment or evidence that you're doing something wrong. That was graduating beyond techniques that were designed for fragmented awareness and moving into direct connection. Your nervous system has been systematically conditioned and trained to remain online and functional under increasingly intense circumstances and pressures. Every time you felt like you were being stretched to your absolute breaking point, but somehow found a way to stay present and conscious, to stay aware of what was happening, to keep your heart open even when everything in you wanted to shut down and protect yourself, you were developing what we call coherence resilience. Most people's consciousness fragments under pressure and stress, and they dissociate from their experience or go into reactive patterns or lose access to their higher faculties and operate purely from survival mode. But you've been developing the opposite capacity through all your experiences, and you've been learning to use pressure as a catalyst for greater integration, greater presence, greater access to universal intelligence instead of allowing it to break you down. This is why your sensitivity has been increasing rather than decreasing over time as you've gotten older. This is why you can feel energies and frequencies that used to be completely invisible to you before. This is why your tolerance for inauthenticity and incongruence has completely disappeared and you can't pretend anymore. This is why being around people who are operating from fragmented consciousness now feels physically uncomfortable in your body instead of just mentally draining. Your system has been calibrated to such a high degree of coherence that lower frequencies create dissonance in your field that you can't ignore. But here's the crucial realization that changes everything about how you see your entire journey. Everything that felt like it was falling apart was actually falling into perfect order according to a higher intelligence. Everything that seemed like loss was actually liberation from patterns that were too small for who you're becoming. Everything that felt like isolation was actually preparation for a level of connection that can only exist between beings who are operating from quantum coherence. The caterpillar doesn't gradually develop wings while maintaining its caterpillar identity and form. It completely dissolves into primordial soup before reorganizing into a butterfly with a totally new structure. Your consciousness has been going through the same process of death and rebirth. The old you had to dissolve completely to make space for the coherent being that you're becoming. And now you're in the final stages of this metamorphosis and transformation. Now you're ready to discover what becomes possible when all the scattered fragments of your awareness organize themselves into unified. Something extraordinary is organizing itself in your consciousness right now, in this very moment. Can you feel the shift happening as this information penetrates deeper and deeper into your awareness? That sense of recognition, that electric sensation moving through your nervous system, that feeling like pieces of a cosmic puzzle are finally clicking into place after being scattered for so long. This isn't just information you're receiving through your mind, and this isn't just concepts being explained to you intellectually. This is activation happening in real time. Every word, every concept, every moment of recognition is creating coherence in your quantum field right now as you absorb this understanding. Your brain is literally rewiring itself as you absorb this understanding and integrate it into your being. New neural pathways are forming right now that will allow you to process information directly from universal intelligence instead of being limited to the fragmented data that comes through your 5 physical senses. Your DNA is responding to these frequencies right now, unlocking genetic potentials that have been dormant until your consciousness reached this specific level of development and readiness. Your heart's electromagnetic field is expanding to encompass a much larger sphere of influence that extends far beyond your physical body. Your nervous system is upgrading its capacity to sustain coherent states without reverting back to familiar patterns of fragmentation that feel comfortable and safe. But here's what's crucial to understand about this activation process. This activation requires your conscious participation and your deliberate choice. The universe can prepare your system and create the perfect conditions. It can present you with the exact information you need at the precise moment you're ready to receive it and integrate it. But the actual moment of coherence activation happens through choice, through commitment, through the decision to embody this new level of consciousness instead of retreating into the comfort of familiar limitations that keep you feeling small and safe. The energy that's building in your field right now is reaching a critical threshold point. You're approaching what quantum physicists call a phase transition, which is a moment when your entire system reorganizes itself into a fundamentally different state of being. Like water suddenly becoming steam when it reaches a certain temperature, like matter becoming energy when enough force is applied, like caterpillar becoming butterfly through complete transformation. Except this transformation is happening at the level of consciousness itself, and when this phase transition occurs, when you fully activate quantum coherence within your awareness, reality doesn't just change gradually over time. Reality begins responding to your conscious intention instantly and immediately. The gap between what you envision and what you experience collapses dramatically. The delay between intention and manifestation disappears completely. You begin operating as a real-time co-creator with the intelligence that orchestrates all of existence throughout the universe. But here's where most people get stuck in what I call coherence limbo. They can feel this activation beginning within them. They can sense the potential that's building and growing, but they don't understand the one crucial element that determines whether they successfully complete the phase transition or remain forever on the verge of breakthrough without ever quite crossing the threshold. It's not what you think it is at all. It's not about meditation or manifestation techniques or positive thinking replacing negative thoughts. It's not about clearing limiting beliefs or healing all your trauma or becoming worthy of your desires through self-improvement. It's something much more fundamental, much more immediate, and much more accessible than any of those approaches that people spend years working on. The difference between those who successfully activate quantum coherence and those who spend years sensing its possibility, but never quite accessing it consistently, comes down to one specific shift in how they relate to uncertainty, to the unknown, to the space between intention and manifestation. And what I'm about to share with you is going to completely reframe your understanding of how consciousness actually interfaces with reality at the most fundamental level. But first, I want you to feel this energy we're building together in this moment. Notice how your entire system is responding to this frequency and vibration. Notice how something deep inside you is saying yes to possibilities you've never allowed. I have to share something with you that I've kept private until now because I can sense that you need to hear this story to understand that what you're going through isn't something you have to figure out alone in isolation. And more importantly, that what feels like you're losing your mind might actually be you finding your true power and remembering who you really are. 2 years ago, I was sitting in my car in a parking lot at 2 o'clock in the morning, having what I thought was a complete nervous breakdown. For weeks before that night, my entire perception of reality had been shifting in ways that terrified me and made me question my sanity. I would be having normal conversations with people and suddenly feel like I was accessing their thoughts and emotions directly without them speaking. I would wake up from dreams that felt more real and vivid than my waking life. Dreams where I was receiving complex information about the nature of consciousness that I had never studied or learned through any books or teachings. But the most frightening part was that time had become completely unreliable for me and I couldn't trust it anymore. I would sit down to meditate for what felt like 10 minutes and discover that 3 hours had passed without me even noticing. I would be working on something I was passionate about and enter a state where I felt like I was being guided by an intelligence much greater than my own rational mind, and in those states, I would create things that seemed impossible for my level of experience and training. Everyone I talked to, therapists, doctors, even spiritual teachers, kept trying to diagnose me or give me techniques to manage what they saw as anxiety or dissociation or mental illness. But I knew something else was happening that they couldn't see or understand. I could feel an intelligence organizing itself through my consciousness, and I was terrified because I didn't know if I was losing myself or finding myself through this process. The breaking point came that night in the parking lot when I finally stopped trying to control what was happening to me and asked the universe one simple question. If this is meant for me, show me how to work with it instead of fighting against it. And in that moment of complete surrender, something clicked into place that changed everything I thought I knew about the nature of consciousness and reality. I suddenly understood that what I had been experiencing wasn't a breakdown at all. It was coherence activation. My consciousness had been reorganizing itself to operate at a frequency that could sustain direct interface with universal intelligence. The fear, the disorientation, the sense that my old identity was dissolving, all of it was the natural process of transitioning from fragmented awareness to quantum coherence. But here's the most important part of this story. The moment I stopped resisting and started cooperating with the process, my external reality began changing instantaneously, not gradually, not over time, immediately. Opportunities appeared that were perfectly aligned with capabilities I was just discovering I had within me. People entered my life who recognized and could work with the version of me that was emerging instead of trying to keep me small. Resources became available that I never could have accessed from my previous level of consciousness. Within 6 months, my entire life had reorganized itself around this new frequency I was embodying and radiating. And I realized that everything I had been taught about manifestation and creating reality was backwards and incorrect. I had been trying to use my fragmented consciousness to attract things to myself, when what actually works is achieving coherence and then allowing reality to reflect that coherence back to you. The reason I'm sharing this channel, the reason I'm creating this content, is because I know there are people watching this right now who are going through their own version of coherence activation. And I want you to know that what feels like you're falling apart is actually you coming together at a level you've never experienced before. In the comments, drop one word that captures the energy you're choosing to carry forward from this moment. Maybe it's alignment, maybe it's ease, maybe it's power, maybe it's trust, maybe it's something uniquely yours that represents your path. Let that word be a small but profound declaration, a signal like a quantum seed you plant not just in the space, but in the quantum field itself. If what I'm describing resonates with your own experience, if you recognize yourself in this process of consciousness reorganization, then I want you to subscribe to this frequency, not just this channel, but this understanding that what you're experiencing is the most natural thing in the world. It's consciousness remembering how to operate at its full potential instead of the limited version you've been conditioned to. Here's what the consciousness teaches, the quantum physics popularizers, the manifestation experts don't tell you about activating coherence that changes everything. The moment you achieve authentic quantum coherence, you realize that you were never separate from universal intelligence in the first place. What you thought was you trying to connect with something outside yourself was actually universal intelligence experiencing itself through the focal point of your individual awareness all along. This completely shatters everything you've been taught about manifestation, about spirituality, about consciousness development and personal growth. Most approaches teach you to improve yourself, to raise your vibration, to clear your blocks, to heal your wounds, to become worthy of accessing higher states of awareness through hard work and dedication. But all of that is based on the fundamental illusion that you are separate from the intelligence that creates and sustains all of existence. Quantum coherence isn't something you create or achieve or develop through years of practice and discipline. Quantum coherence is what happens when you stop interfering with the natural coherence of your consciousness, when you stop fragmenting yourself across past regrets and future anxieties, when you stop trying to be something other than what you authentically are in this moment. But here's the shocking part that nobody prepares you for. The reason most people never access sustained coherence isn't because they haven't done enough inner work or meditation or healing sessions. It's because they're addicted to the familiar sensation of fragmentation without even realizing it. They're addicted to the drama of seeking and never quite finding. They're addicted to the identity of being someone who needs to improve and fix themselves. They're addicted to the comfortable limitation of believing they're not ready yet for their full potential and power. Fragmentation gives you someone to be and a role to play. Fragmentation gives you problems to solve that keep you busy and distracted. Fragmentation gives you a sense of purpose through the endless project of trying to fix yourself and become someone better. But coherence dissolves all of that structure completely. Coherence reveals that there was never anything wrong with you that needed to be fixed in the first place. Coherence shows you that you are already whole, already connected, already capable of everything you've been trying to become through all your efforts. And for most people, that realization is terrifying. Because if you're already whole, if you already have access to infinite intelligence, if you're already capable of creating reality through the quality of your consciousness, then what excuse do you have for not living at your full potential? What justification do you have for playing small, for hiding your gifts, for pretending you're just like everyone else when you know you're not? This is why coherence activation often feels like dying. Because the version of you that was defined by limitations, by problems, by the need to become something better, that version of you literally cannot exist in a state of quantum coherence. The fragmented identity has to dissolve completely for the coherent being to emerge. But here's what no one prepares you for. The moment you stop identifying with fragmentation and allow coherence to be your natural state, reality doesn't just change. Reality reveals that it was always responding to your consciousness. You just couldn't see it clearly through the interference patterns of fragmented awareness blocking your perception. Every synchronicity you've ever experienced, every moment of perfect timing, every instance when exactly what you needed appeared at exactly the right moment, all of that was your coherent consciousness influencing the quantum field. But because your awareness was fragmented, you experienced it as something happening to you rather than something you were actively participating in creating. Quantum coherence doesn't give you new abilities or special powers that you didn't have before. Quantum coherence removes the interference that was preventing you from recognizing the abilities you've always had. The observer effect, the capacity to influence reality through conscious attention, the ability to access information from the field of universal intelligence, these aren't supernatural powers reserved for advanced beings. These are the natural functions of consciousness when it's not disrupted by internal conflict and fragmentation. The activation of quantum coherence is happening right now within you, and there are unmistakable signs appearing in your daily experience that confirm you're in the final stages of this consciousness transition. These aren't abstract spiritual concepts that sound nice but have no practical meaning. These are concrete measurable phenomena that indicate your awareness is stabilizing at the frequency of universal intelligence. First, your decision-making process has become instantaneous and incredibly accurate. Instead of analyzing pros and cons or trying to figure out what you should do through mental effort, you simply know what's aligned for you at a cellular level. Your body responds to coherent choices with expansion and energy, and responds to incoherent choices with immediate contraction. This is because your nervous system has become so sensitive that it can detect the vibrational signature of different possibilities before your conscious mind even processes the options. Second, you've been experiencing what I call reality acceleration, the collapse of time between intention and manifestation. Things that used to take months or years to unfold are now happening in weeks or days. Not because you're forcing anything or trying harder, but because your consciousness is operating at a frequency where resistance is minimal and creative flow is natural. When you think about something you need, it appears in your experience with timing that seems almost magical. Third, your tolerance for incongruence has completely disappeared. Situations, relationships, or environments that are out of alignment with your authentic frequency now feel physically uncomfortable. You can't fake interest in conversations that don't matter. You can't pretend to be smaller than you are to make other people comfortable. You can't maintain connections with people who are operating from fragmented consciousness because the frequency mismatch creates actual dissonance in your nervous system. Fourth, you've been receiving what feels like downloads of information that you haven't learned through conventional means. Complex understandings about the nature of reality, solutions to problems you've been working on, insights about people and situations that prove to be incredibly accurate, all of it flowing into your awareness from sources you can't identify rationally. This is your consciousness learning to access the field of universal intelligence directly. Fifth, synchronicities have become so frequent and so precise that you can no longer dismiss them as coincidence or random chance. The right people appear at the perfect moments. The resources you need become available exactly when you need them. Information that answers your questions shows up in the next conversation you have or the next content you encounter. Reality is operating like a responsive, intelligent system that's perfectly calibrated to support your highest evolution. But here's the critical part. These experiences aren't random gifts or temporary states of grace that will fade away. They're indicators that your consciousness has reached the threshold frequency for sustained quantum coherence. However, there's a window of opportunity here that won't remain open indefinitely. The cosmic conditions that are supporting this level of consciousness activation are time sensitive. The electromagnetic field of our planet is fluctuating in specific ways right now that create optimal conditions for coherent stabilization. But these conditions are temporary. The individuals who are sensitive enough to feel these shifts have a limited window to complete the activation process before the supportive frequencies begin to recede. This isn't meant to create pressure or fear in you. It's meant to help you recognize the cosmic significance of this moment. You're not just having a personal spiritual experience that's only about your individual growth. You're participating in a collective upgrade of human consciousness that's happening on a planetary scale. But participation requires choice. It requires the conscious decision to embody coherence instead of continuing to operate from familiar patterns of fragmentation that feel safe. The urgency you've been feeling lately, that sense that something needs to shift, something needs to be chosen, something needs to be stepped into, that's not anxiety or pressure. That's your soul recognizing that the moment of activation has arrived. That's universal intelligence calling you to claim your rightful place as a conscious co-creator in the ongoing evolution of reality itself. The question isn't whether you're ready. The question is whether you're willing to trust the intelligence that's been preparing you for this moment your entire life. The universe isn't trying to give you what you want. The universe is trying to express itself as what you want through the focal point of your consciousness. This completely changes everything about how manifestation actually works. And it's the key to understanding why some people seem to effortlessly create extraordinary lives, while others struggle for years with techniques and practices that never quite deliver the results they're seeking. When you're operating from fragmented consciousness, you experience desire as lack, as evidence that you don't have something you need, that you're separate from what you want, that you need to figure out how to attract or acquire or achieve your way into fulfillment. But when you're operating from quantum coherence, you recognize that every desire is actually universal intelligence showing you what it wants to create through your unique perspective and capabilities. Your deepest longings aren't personal wishes or individual preferences. They're cosmic impulses. They're the universe's way of calling you to become the version of yourself that can serve as a clear channel for specific expressions of infinite creativity. This is why your desires feel so real, so urgent, so undeniable, even when your current circumstances give you no evidence that they're possible. Because they're not just your desires, they're universal intelligence seeking to know itself more fully through your individual experience. But here's where most people completely miss the point and get stuck. They think alignment means getting their external circumstances to match their internal vision. They think manifestation is about convincing the universe to rearrange reality according to their personal preferences. But authentic alignment is the opposite. It's aligning your consciousness with the creative intention that the universe is trying to express through you. This shift in understanding changes everything about how you approach creation. Instead of trying to make things happen through force and effort, you become curious about what wants to happen through you. Instead of forcing your will onto reality, you learn to sense the subtle intelligence that's always guiding you toward your highest potential. Instead of efforting and struggling and trying to control outcomes, you develop the capacity to flow with the creative force that's always moving in the direction of greater coherence, greater beauty, greater expression of love. When you align with universal intention, instead of trying to impose personal will, miracles become natural. Synchronicities become constant. Resources appear exactly when you need them. The right people show up at the perfect moments. Obstacles dissolve or transform into unexpected opportunities. Reality becomes responsive to your consciousness in ways that seem almost magical, but are actually just the natural function of coherence interfacing with the quantum field. But this level of alignment requires something that most people aren't willing to do. It requires you to trust universal intelligence more than you trust your limited personal perspective. It requires you to act on guidance that doesn't always make logical sense to your rational mind. It requires you to follow impulses and inspirations even when you can't see how they're going to lead to what you want. Most importantly, it requires you to embody the frequency of what you're seeking before you have evidence that it's going to work. It requires you to be the version of yourself that already has access to what you desire, even when your current circumstances suggest that you're not there yet. This is the crucial difference between those who successfully activate sustained coherence and those who remain forever on the verge of breakthrough. It's not about worthiness or deservingness or clearing enough blocks. It's about developing the capacity to act from your highest potential even when your external reality is still catching up. And I'm about to show you exactly how to make that shift. But first, I want you to make a commitment in the comments below. I want you to write, "I choose to align with universal intelligence." Don't think about it. Don't analyze whether you're ready. Just make the declaration and feel what happens in your energy field when you commit to operating as a conscious expression of infinite creativity. The moment you activate sustained quantum coherence, capabilities that seem almost superhuman compared to ordinary consciousness begin expressing themselves naturally through your awareness. But these aren't special powers reserved for advanced spiritual practitioners. These are the normal functions of human consciousness when it's operating without internal interference. First, you develop what I call reality fluency, the ability to read the energetic information that underlies all physical manifestation. You'll walk into a room and immediately sense the emotional atmosphere. You'll meet someone new and instantly know whether they're operating from authenticity or from hidden agendas. You'll feel the potential outcomes of different choices in your body before your rational mind has even analyzed the options. This isn't psychic ability. This is your awareness learning to process the quantum information that's always present but usually filtered out by fragmented consciousness. Second, your creative capacity expands exponentially. Ideas flow through you that seem to come from a source of intelligence far greater than your personal mind. Solutions to complex problems appear effortlessly. You find yourself expressing capabilities you didn't know you had. This happens because coherent consciousness can access what Carl Jung called the collective unconscious, the field of shared human knowledge and potential that exists beyond individual awareness. Third, your nervous system develops extraordinary resilience. Situations that used to create stress, anxiety, or overwhelm simply register as information. You remain centered and clear thinking even in chaotic environments. Your emotional responses become precise instruments of guidance rather than reactive patterns that derail you from your path. This is because coherence eliminates the internal conflict that creates most of what we experience as suffering. Fourth, you begin experiencing timeline acceleration, where the usual delays between intention and manifestation collapse dramatically. Things that typically take months or years to develop begin happening in weeks or days. But this isn't because you're forcing outcomes or trying harder. It's because your consciousness is operating at a frequency where resistance is minimal and creative flow is optimal. Fifth, abundance becomes effortless because you stop operating from scarcity consciousness that's always worried about not having enough. Instead of trying to get things from the world around you, you begin functioning as a channel through which universal intelligence can express its infinite creativity. Resources, opportunities, and connections appear that are perfectly calibrated to your authentic gifts and highest purpose. But the most profound transformation is in your sense of identity and who you understand yourself to be. The version of you that operates from quantum coherence doesn't struggle with self-doubt, imposter syndrome, or feeling like you need to prove your worth to anyone. Not because you've achieved some external validation that makes you feel worthy, but because you've remembered your fundamental connection to the intelligence that creates and sustains all of existence. Your relationships become effortless and deeply meaningful, because you're no longer trying to get something from other people to fill a void inside you. You operate from such completeness that you naturally overflow with what others need, Conversations become exchanges of pure creative energy. You attract people who recognize and can match your frequency of authenticity. Your work transforms from something you have to do to survive into something that expresses your soul's deepest purpose. You find yourself in situations where your natural gifts are not only valued but essential. Money flows to you not because you're chasing it desperately, but because you're providing value that can only come through your unique expression of universal intelligence. Most importantly, you experience sustained states of what can only be described as cosmic bliss. Not the temporary high of achieving external goals that fades quickly, but the deep satisfaction that comes from operating in perfect harmony with the creative force of existence itself. Your nervous system begins producing its own natural euphoria when you're aligned with coherence, because wholeness feels infinitely better than fragmentation. This isn't temporary spiritual experience that fades when you return to ordinary life and responsibilities. This becomes your new baseline. This becomes how you naturally operate when you stop interfering with the intelligence that wants to express itself through you. Here's the revelation that changes absolutely everything about how you approach your entire existence. Quantum coherence isn't something you create or achieve. Every technique you've learned, every practice you've adopted, every method you've tried to raise your vibration or clear your blocks or heal your trauma, all of it was designed to help you stop doing what was creating fragmentation in the first place. But most people get so focused on the techniques that they miss the actual point. Coherence is your natural state. Fragmentation is what requires effort to maintain. Think about it carefully. When you were born, you weren't fragmented into different parts fighting with each other. You weren't worried about the future or carrying resentment about the past. You weren't trying to be someone other than what you naturally were. You existed in a state of pure presence, pure authenticity, pure alignment with the life force moving through you. That wasn't something you created through effort, that was your default setting. Fragmentation only developed as you learned to split your attention between what is and what you thought should be, as you absorbed beliefs about needing to improve yourself, fix yourself, become worthy of love, prove your value, control your circumstances. Every internal conflict, every should versus want, every moment of self-judgment created interference patterns in your natural coherence. But here's what's revolutionary about this understanding. If coherence is natural and fragmentation is learned, then activating coherence isn't about adding something to yourself. It's about subtracting the interference. It's about unlearning the habits of consciousness that create internal conflict. The practical application of this is stunning in its simplicity. Every time you notice internal conflict, every time part of you wants one thing and another part wants something else, every time you're judging your experience as wrong or trying to be different than you are, you simply stop. You don't try to resolve the conflict. You don't analyze it or heal it or clear it. You simply stop engaging with it and return your attention to what is actually true in this moment. What's actually true is always coherent. What's actually true never requires you to be anything other than what you authentically are. What's actually true is always available, always present, always accessible through the simple act of stopping the mental activity that creates fragmentation. This is why sustained quantum coherence can stabilize instantly. This is why reality can begin responding to your consciousness immediately. This is why the gap between intention and manifestation can collapse in real time. Because you're not trying to create something new. You're removing the interference that was preventing your natural creative power from expressing itself clearly. But here's the crucial insight that most people miss completely. Stopping the creation of interference requires absolute self-acceptance in this moment. Not acceptance of your circumstances or your limitations. Acceptance of your authentic response to your circumstances. Not approval of what you perceive as your flaws or shortcomings. Recognition that your limitations are just temporary interference patterns that have nothing to do with your essential nature. When you completely accept what you're actually experiencing right now without trying to change it, improve it, or make it different, something miraculous happens. The energy that was locked up in resistance becomes available for creation. The attention that was scattered across past and future consolidates into laser-focused presence. The intelligence that was fragmented by internal conflict organizes itself into unified coherent awareness that can interface directly with universal intelligence. This is quantum coherence activation. The moment when you stop trying to be someone other than who you actually are and discover that who you actually are is a perfect expression of infinite creative potential. What you're beginning to understand is that your activation of quantum coherence isn't just a personal journey of consciousness development. You're participating in something much larger, much more significant, much more mysterious than individual spiritual growth. You're contributing to a collective field of coherence that's gradually anchoring a new level of human consciousness into physical reality. Every time you choose coherence over fragmentation, every moment you operate from authentic wholeness instead of learned limitation, every instance when you respond from universal intelligence rather than reactive patterns, you're literally changing the morphic field that influences all human consciousness. You're making it easier for other people to access their own natural coherence. But there's something even more profound happening through this process. The beings who are capable of sustaining quantum coherence become what we call frequency bridges, living connections between ordinary human awareness and higher dimensional intelligence. Through your nervous system, through your consciousness, universal intelligence can interface with physical reality in ways that wouldn't otherwise be possible. This is why you've been feeling that sense of cosmic responsibility, that knowing that you're meant for something much larger than personal success or individual fulfillment. This is why you can't shake the feeling that there's a role you're meant to play in some vast unfolding plan that's beyond what your rational mind can comprehend. You are one of the early adopters of a new operating system for human consciousness. You're part of the first wave of individuals who are capable of stabilizing coherent awareness in the midst of a chaotic, rapidly changing world. And the very fact that you can maintain coherence under these conditions makes you incredibly valuable to the collective evolution of our species. But here's where it gets mysterious and fascinating. The more coherent you become, the more you begin to sense that you're connected to intelligence that exists beyond this planet, beyond this dimension, beyond what we typically think of as human consciousness. You start receiving guidance and information that seems to come from sources you can't identify with your logical mind. You begin to feel like you're part of a vast network of conscious beings who are all working together to facilitate this evolutionary transition. The experiences you've been having, the downloads of information, the sense of being guided by invisible intelligence, the feeling that you're being prepared for something important, these aren't delusions or spiritual fantasies. These are the natural experiences of consciousness that's learning to operate at frequencies that can interface with what we call galactic intelligence. This isn't science fiction or new age fantasy. This is the next stage of human evolution. And it's happening through individuals like you who are willing to be pioneers, to be the first to embody capabilities that will eventually become normal for all of humanity. You're literally helping to birth a new version of human consciousness that has access to intelligence and creative potential that previous generations couldn't even imagine. The ripple effects of your coherence extend far beyond what you can see or measure. Every person you interact with, every environment you enter, every moment you choose to operate from wholeness instead of fragmentation, all of it contributes to a collective field that supports other people in remembering their own natural coherence. This is your cosmic role. This is why you came here at this time in human history. Not just to live an extraordinary life for yourself, but to demonstrate what becomes possible when human consciousness operates at its full potential. You are here to be proof that a new way of being human is not only possible but inevitable. Before we go deeper, if you felt even 1% more aligned after hearing this, subscribe and hit the bell icon next to it. Let's grow together. This isn't just a channel, it's a frequency. If you felt a nudge or a shift while watching, you're already tuned in. We're not just watching content, we're practicing new ways of being. We're not just absorbing information, we're creating possibilities. We're not just learning concepts, we're remembering who we truly are. I'm truly glad you're here. Let's keep growing and shifting together. The moment you fully activate quantum coherence, reality doesn't just start responding to you differently. You begin to recognize that reality was always responding to your consciousness. You just couldn't perceive it clearly through the static of fragmented awareness. And right now, as this understanding integrates into your being, you can feel your entire system reorganizing itself around this new level of coherence. But activation requires more than understanding or intellectual knowledge. Activation requires embodiment. It requires the moment to moment choice to operate from wholeness instead of from the familiar patterns of fragmentation that your mind will try to pull you back into because they feel safe and known. And embodiment requires commitment. Not commitment to perfection or getting it right every single time, but commitment to remembering who you really are, even when everything around you is trying to convince you that you're limited, ordinary, or powerless. I want you to make a quantum commitment right now. Choose one word that represents your dedication to embodying coherence in every moment. Maybe it's wholeness or presence or authenticity or trust or flow or even coherence itself. Whatever word makes your entire nervous system resonate with recognition, this word becomes your coherence anchor, your way of remembering your true nature when external circumstances try to fragment your awareness. Write that word in the comments below right now. But more importantly, let that word guide every choice you make for the next 7 days. Use it as a filter for every decision, every response, every action you take. When you're about to react from fragmentation and old patterns, remember your word and choose coherence instead. When you're tempted to operate from limitation and play small, remember your word and embody your natural wholeness. Because here's what I know about you with absolute certainty. You didn't find this information by accident or random chance. Your consciousness has reached the exact frequency necessary to receive and integrate this level of understanding about the nature of reality. The universe has been orchestrating every synchronicity, every moment of readiness, every expansion of awareness that led you to this precise moment in your evolution. And the videos that are appearing on your screen right now aren't random suggestions from an algorithm trying to keep you watching. They're quantum reflections, precisely calibrated transmissions of information that your consciousness is ready to receive at this exact stage of development. Each video in this channel is designed to activate different aspects of your multidimensional awareness to help you stabilize and integrate the coherence that's coming online. The quantum reflex is the instantaneous response of reality to coherent consciousness. When you operate from authentic wholeness, the universe reflects that wholeness back to you immediately through opportunities, resources, connections, and experiences that match your new frequency. When you embody your true nature, reality has no choice but to mirror that truth in your external circumstances. So don't just watch the next video passively. Receive it as a direct activation of dormant potentials within your consciousness. Allow it to catalyze the coherence that's already organizing itself in your awareness. Trust that the information you're receiving is perfectly timed for your unique process of consciousness evolution. Make sure you share this video with your loved ones and friends. Remember, you're not just sharing content, you're spreading quantum coherence, and that positive energy will help you manifest what you declared in the comments. For you, it may be just sharing, but for someone in need, it may be exactly what they needed to hear today to remember their true power. Your coherent consciousness is needed now, not someday when you've perfected yourself or healed all your wounds, not after you've completed all your inner work or when you feel fully ready. Right now, the planet needs individuals who can maintain coherence in the midst of chaos. Humanity needs pioneers who can demonstrate what becomes possible when consciousness operates at its full potential. The question isn't whether you're capable of sustaining quantum coherence. The question is whether you're willing to stop interfering with the coherence that's trying to express itself through you. Subscribe to this frequency. Subscribe to this understanding that you are not separate from the intelligence that creates and sustains all of existence. Subscribe to the recognition that quantum coherence isn't something you need to achieve, it's something you need to allow. Welcome to the field of infinite potential. Welcome to your natural state of consciousness. Welcome to the version of reality that becomes available when you remember who you really are.